Well, I got my Swiss visa in just 2 days. And actually, it took me more time to collect my documentation to apply for my visa than actually it took time for the embassy to approve my visa. So if you're planning to travel to Europe on Schengen visa, this video is for you. I'm gonna share everything about my experience, how I made my documentation so that my visa got approved in just under 2 days. Let's start by saying that Europe visa is definitely one of the most difficult visas. I mean, apart from the US. And lately, there are a lot of rejections even for people who are going for traveling purposes only. And they have everything in order. So I want to bring out that video about my experience because it was just a breeze for me. But yes, I did a lot of preparation. And that is the reason I am here recording this video, trying to tell you like what I did, and you can follow the same steps to get your Europe Schengen visa as soon as possible. Let's start with the process. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to decide on which country you want to apply your visa for. Now, Europe, as we know, has multiple countries. It depends on your itinerary, which country do you want to apply this and which embassy you need to apply to this. Now, generally what I've learned before going for my visa was that you need to apply to the country where you are the first point in entry. But it turns out is actually not always the case. Since in my case, I was traveling to almost 5 different countries for my itinerary, but my maximum number of days were in Switzerland. And that is the reason I applied to Swiss embassy. Now, once you've selected the country, the next step is pretty simple. You need to fill the visa application form. In my case, I actually downloaded the Swiss visa application form since I was applying for Swiss embassy. I know a lot of people think that visa application form is really difficult. Will I be able to do it myself? But actually, in all fairness, these visa forms are really straightforward. So you can actually just need to fill in your basic details about your stay, about your demographics, about your income. So all of those things are the basics that you have. Now, to fill the visa application form, I would probably say before start filling up it, you can download something called the checklist. Yes. Every embassy, every country will have the checklist for the documentation that they need to be submitted along with your visa form. So what I did, I downloaded the checklist from the Swiss embassy. And once I had the checklist, based on that, I started collecting my documentation. You can actually download these checklists from VFS Global also. VFS Global has generally checklists for most of the countries now. These are similar checklists because for Schengen visa, mostly every country has a similar documentation required. So even if you're applying for the France embassy or German embassy, watching this video, you can absolutely do this. Now, generally when I talk about checklists, there are different sections, maybe 2 or 3 different types of documentation that you need. I'm going to tell you about that. The first is, of course, your personal documentation, like your passport. You need some passport size photographs as per the specifications. Then you also need, if you have any previous passports, you need that also. Along with that, you need to have your visa application form and also about the covering letter. I'm going to talk about covering letter later in this video, about how you make a covering letter. And I will also show you my covering letter sample because I made a pretty detailed covering letter. And once I showed to a couple of my friends, they told me that your covering letter is good enough to grant you visa. I'm sure they must have not checked any of your documents after that. Well, I don't know about that, but I love to do a thorough work. Now, next set is very important, which is your travel insurance. Now, for Schengen visa, you need to have a travel insurance. So make sure you do it before submitting your visa to VFS. Now, generally depends about $50,000 to about $100,000 should be the minimum cover. I took personally about $100,000 cover for my entire stay, and it's pretty cheap. I used the AIG, which is approved by Schengen visa. So you can also look at the approved insurance companies who can actually offer the insurance visa for the Europe travel. So make sure you are covered with that, because I know few people told me that they went to VFS Global to submit for their visa, but they never had the travel insurance. So make sure you have that. Apart from that, you need to show your confirmation, booking confirmation. So you need a flight reservation confirmation, and then you need your hotel's confirmation. These are 2 really important things for you to do. Now, if you're traveling between multiple countries, you don't need to book the local flights. This was one question that I had, but my visa went through altogether. I haven't booked the internal flights. What I did was I actually took the EU Rail Pass. Now, EU Rail Pass is the network of trains that you will travel throughout the Europe. So instead of just taking the Swiss travel pass, I took the EU travel pass, rail travel pass, which really helped me with seamless connectivity to different countries. So you need to show the booking for your flight, booking for your hotels, and maybe if you can take EU Rail or something like that, that's okay. Now, even to book your hotels, you don't have to pay for it. Like I didn't pay for any of my hotel. I actually booked it as like pay later. even pay at hotel, and that was also very fine. Now, once you have that booking, the next set of documentation, which I think a lot of people they are afraid of, is their financial documentation. Now, in my opinion, these are not very difficult if you are regular with your financial documentation. So generally, they want your ITR documentation. So probably last 2 years, I took 3 years of my ITR. So last 2 years of your income tax documentation is required. Now, along with that, they need to see about the bank balance. Of course, you're traveling to Europe. It's an expensive place. Do you have the means to cover for your travel? So on an average, if you are traveling, you can actually multiply the amount based on the number of travelers. So if you are, for me, I traveled with my family for about 4 people, and that was an expense of about 10 to 12 lakh rupees for the entire trip. So you can actually show that through your savings, through your accounts. Now, again, there are a lot of confusion based on this, like whether do you need it in the liquid thing, whether you want to showcase in your bank account, will FDs work for you? Well, I showed my FDs and it worked very well. So it was not like I had that kind of an amount in my savings account. It was there in my FDs, which was also pretty fine. So your financial documentation includes your ITR returns. Then you need to have the funds to show for your travel. Anything that you've already made the reservation for, like for me, I already paid for my flight. So that was also covered in my financial for that matter. But I think apart from that, you need to have, if you are a working professional, then you need to have the salary slips from your employer and also an NOC document. Now, yes, this is an important requirement, which is no objection. Now, sometimes I've seen people not telling their employers before they go out for their vacation and they don't have NOC. Now, it really depends on you. I have a friend who applied without NOC. NOC was asked at the VFS, but he had no NOC. But he still got the visa. But I would probably say, please get the NOC. That'll be more beneficial for you. Now, in case if you're an entrepreneur just like me, then you need to have your company documentation. So the ITR for your company for last 2 years, and then you need to show the bank balance and funds available in your company also. So make sure if you're an entrepreneur, there are some more additional requirements. If you have your own business, you need to have additional, need to furnish more additional documentation in financing part. Now, as I've told you, it was difficult to arrange all of these things because I have to call to my CA to get all those documents and other things. But actually, it's not that difficult if you have everything in order. Now, one important thing that I told you in the beginning of the video also is the cover letter. Now, cover letter is really important. You can Google it. You'll find a lot of different samples and templates of cover letter. But I actually created a very detailed cover letter. And if you can see it here, I have written a lot of things about like my purpose, who all are visiting. I've given details about my itinerary, where am I visiting, when I'm going, I'm paying for it. I also talked about my business, that how I'm passionate about my work, and definitely I want to come back and other details. It just gives an idea for the embassy that you're a genuine person. I told them about like I've been working in this industry for almost 14 years. And so I've given a basic details. Now, some people told me that it's little too much, but I feel like there's no harm in adding few lines about my work that can get me the visa thing. Why not? And as I've told you, a few people also told me your cover letter is so comprehensive. I really doubted that they looked at any of your documents. So I think work on your cover letter. This is one area that I've seen a lot of people not working on the cover letter. So that's about cover letter. So I think all in all, this is the part of all the documentation. Now, once you're done with your documentation, it becomes easier for you to actually fill up the visa application form. And once you fill up the visa application form, make sure to have the travel insurance for yourself. And then you just need to go to VFS, and then you need to just fill up the basic detail on the VFS site and then pick up a date. Now, generally, of course, if it's a peak time, you might not be able to get date. But for me, when I applied, I actually got a date within a week's time, and then just within less than 48 hours, my visa was delivered. It was actually delivered, not just approved, it was delivered to my home. So when you apply for VFS, there is one thing that you will notice, that they have a regular visa fee, which is the European visa, so which is standard. And then they have these optional fees. And there's always this thing, there's something called a premium services, where they have a premium lounge access. And whether to buy it or not, but then later on, I actually took the premium lounge services. It was something around 3,000, but I think it has been increased to about 3,500 or something. which is on top of your visa fee. Now, to me, it really depends on you. I feel like that was a good decision for me to take the lounge access because it was a place where you were being seated and you're being, served the tea, coffee, and other things while you wait for your turn. It just like gets you in the right mood. On the regular side, I think there are no seating arrangements. You just have to stand on the counter and wait for your turn. So I want to go relaxed, and I feel like when I'm traveling and spending so much, this is a small amount that I can give it on the lounge access also. So for me, if you can afford it, definitely go for the lounge access, which will make the whole experience pretty good for you. And in fact, at the time of the submitting the documentation, there was somebody who was assisting us with the documentation. Somebody from VFS actually checked up all our documents, arranged in order and everything. So that kind of a service will help you, will give you that peace of mind that at least you've submitted everything properly. So that was another reason that I took that premium service for. And I think when you go to VFS, pretty straightforward. You go for your visa documentation. They will review your documentation. You will pay the fee there. And after that, you just have to go for the fingerprinting, which is just like a 5 minutes job. And after fingerprinting, you can go out. So all in all, for us, it took about 1.5 hours right at the time when we entered VFS to completing everything. So it was pretty breeze. But this is one thing I want to talk about. Like, if you can, definitely take up the premium lounge services. So it's pretty straightforward after submission. And if you have done your documentation well, got a good cover letter, your visa will be approved in no time for sure. Now, this is the same process and everything is the same for the student visa. I just want to extend it a bit more. When I talked about the checklist earlier, for student visa, there are a couple more other requirements. So the financial documentation will be your sponsors, not yours. So if it's your father or it's your mother or somebody else, the financial documentation will be from that person. Now, the other part that you need is university specific or offer specific documentation. So it's pretty straightforward. Your offer letter, of course, the course that you're applied for, your fee structure that you have, and if you've paid any fee, receipt for that. And if you have other documentation in terms of your school transcripts, your college transcripts, and all the documentation are a separate part of it when you apply for student visa. But the process remains the same. Documentation remains the same, just like the additional documentation. And I think you should be good. Same thing that you have to apply to VFS, go for fingerprinting, and that's it. I hope you've got some great insight into my experience with the Europe visa. And I just wanted to have this video for you because there are a lot of things. Do you need a travel agent or not? I feel like you can do it yourself if you have done and if you are proficient enough in filling up these forms and other things. But if you don't have that expertise, if you feel a little feared, scared, then you can go for a travel agent. But in my opinion, you can absolutely do it yourself. This was my experience. I got my Swiss visa in just 2 days. I hope this video helped you. And let me know if you need any more help, any more details. Happy to make another video. See you.